Hey, John. Well, this is the first time Norfolk Southern CEO Alan Shaw has faced lawmakers since that East Palestine train derailment last month that resulted in the release of all those toxic chemicals. So over the course of 3 hours, this hearing of the Senate Environment and Public Works Committee, Shaw, who I should note only became CEO less than a year ago, responding to a question about whether he would, quote, lead in the industry in doing away with precision scheduled railroading.
In December of last year, I charted a new course in the industry. And I said we're going to move away from a near-term focus solely on profits, and that we're going to take a longer-term view that's founded on our engagement with our craft employees who are so critical to our success. We were the first to pivot out of it.
Shaw actually appeared on CNBC after that December Investor Day to outline that strategy shift. The hearing, which also included EPA and other government officials focusing on rail safety, environmental cleanup, and also veered multiple times into the topic of and the criticism of stock buybacks, given the fact that Norfolk Southern did spend upwards of $3 billion last year to repurchase shares and a similar sum the year before. After the hearing, I asked committee chairman Tom Carper how he sees that topic.
The idea of companies buying back some of their shares from time to time, I think that's probably appropriate. There's can be too much of it, and I think the more we need to keep talking about it and reminding companies that there's other things that they ought to be doing with their money other than just buying back their own shares.
And it was worth noting that Norfolk Southern does spend about $1 billion a year on its infrastructure. It did earlier this week, ahead of its testimony, announce a new safety plan as well. But here to discuss not only the hearing today, but what it means for this company and for the industry moving forward, Senator Ed Markey of Massachusetts, who is also a member of the committee. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Great to be with you. Thank you.
Now, you're also a member of the Commerce Committee, which is actually the committee that regulates the railroads. So what did you learn today, and how will that shape how you're thinking about regulation from the Commerce Committee standpoint moving forward?
Well, obviously, we heard that Norfolk Southern made more than $3 billion last year, had more than $3 billion worth of stock buybacks, yet obviously they have not invested enough in safety. You don't have a profit until you've invested enough in safety. So that company is just going to have to reprioritize, make sure they're putting more funding into their infrastructure. And from my perspective, I still did not hear a wholesome, a full-throated commitment to all of the homeowners, to all of the small businesses, to everyone who has been implicated in this crisis with their long-term health concerns, that Norfolk Southern is committed to paying all of those bills in the long term. All he kept saying was, we'll do the right thing. My fear is that when the cameras go away, all it's going to be is Norfolk Southern's accountants in a battle with that community. And the right thing for them will be to continue to increase their profits, to continue to increase their stock buybacks, and not compensate the poor people in this community.
Well, he also said today that they've put more than $20 million towards the community and towards the effort so far. And I think he called that a quote unquote down payment. As a lawmaker, how can you ensure, because we are talking about carcinogenic chemicals that were released into the environment, and we may not know the full impact of that for many years, if not decades, how do you ensure that that actually happens, that responsibility continues over the long term?
Well, obviously, chemicals can have a very powerful impact on the endocrine system of human beings, the computer system of human beings. And long term, it could have an impact on pregnant women, could have an impact on children that are born in the years ahead because of the change that could occur because of chemicals in the bodies of those who lived in East Palestine. So we're going to have an open-ended commitment to taking care of families, to compensating them for the health care impacts of what happened on February 3rd.
We did see just another train derailment this morning for Norfolk Southern. We actually saw one from CSX as well, I think in the last 24 hours too. Is this a company-specific issue, or is this an industry issue? And if so, what does that mean in terms of regulations and whether you're going to support the recently proposed safety regulations that were put forward last week?
Well, there were more than 1,000 derailments in the United States last year alone. Mm-hmm. So we have to have a major increase in the safety measures that we put in place. Otherwise, small communities and large all across the country are going to continue to run the risk that there could be a catastrophic event. So the legislation which Senator Brown and Senator Vance and Fetterman and Casey have introduced, I think it's a good starting point for us to include those safety measures, including a provision which is inside their legislation, which I've been introducing for years, to ensure that they have at least 2 people on board each one of these trains to guarantee that safety is given much more attention, because some of these trains have 100, 200, 300 or more cars going through communities.